Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, and I'm flying solo today. Couldn't get on the same page with a few of my colleagues that are out there, so rather than have all of yous out there wait another day or so for our what should be our early week episode, I'm just going to come at you with a few of my own thoughts over the weekend and come back with some other topics later this week and early next week, where I believe Brian and or the professor Zach Meckler will be joining us. So I wanted to get into some current events here on the Steel City Underground podcast, particularly our YouTube platform. For those of you who may have seen the message over on the community discussion tab on our channel, if you're listening there or not, I think it's important to put out there that YouTube demonetized our account. This happened about a week ago, and we didn't really address it here on the show. Didn't want to clutter up or otherwise on the high note of having Merrill Hodge and Rocky Blyer on the previous two shows with some fantastic interviews, by the way, if you didn't have a chance to listen. They came out and said that we reused content or had like duplicate content that's not original or little value to their audience, was the exact quotes. And they come back with this type of deal. And what they say is they don't say anything. They copy paste the same things over and over. They have like 4 or 5 bullet points, none of which, fit to our we don't fit the criteria for any of this, but they don't listen. So we're on a bit of a moratorium before we can reapply. There's no like appeal process or anything. It's like a wait period, which is absolutely ridiculous. Appreciate the support. I see some of the comments that are out there. I also see some of the other comments, several that I've removed, and I have no doubt that sometimes when you're dealing in an industry like this, I don't understand it. When you're part of media or sports reporters, I get there's a little bit of competitive balance there. We've never been one that's like a breaking news platform. We're more, editorial and things of that nature. But there's still folks out there that treat this in a very juvenile fashion. They act as though it's like high school drama. They're trying to one-up you on everything, and that they won't put it beneath themselves to report people, flag things, and things of that nature. So it's frustrating in that regard, and shame on them. They know who they are because they listen to this program, and for that, thank you for your support. For everyone else who supports the program, we're looking into some other things. Let us know in the comments, and that some have already said we've pretty much been we've been anti like doing anything like Patreon or doing PayPal, and I understand that some of these things are generally accepted practices in today's climate. But we felt good enough with what was going on with YouTube. It's like, hey, they're running ads on our stuff. Okay, that's cool. We'll get a couple pennies here or there, or whatever it is off of that. You're supposed to be a partner in that, right? And if you're listening on another platform and there are ads, there are some various other things tied into that where that's not shut off, and that still supports the platform here. We do have some overhead costs, we're just so there's some things there to keep this operation going. But for the most part, YouTube right now, we're getting zero off of it, and I just wanted to clear the air there. You'll still be able to listen here, but if you have other means of listening or whatever, by all means, support the platform there. Let us know if you'd be interested in something like a Patreon or a PayPal. I always felt like it was begging for money, like they have these, Indiegogo and Kickstarter. You get things like that, or GoFundMe. That's the one I'm looking for. Sorry, the other ones are, for a product or service or whatever. But like a GoFundMe, and somebody's like, hey, I want a new car or something. I never felt like begging for anybody to help support this. It's like you support it by listening to it, and that helps support it. You know what I mean? So let me know. Let us know in the comments if there's anything that you would advise, suggest, or would like, and I think we're going to get that rolling. I think we've been sitting on it long enough, and now it's time, just based off of this, because you just never know. I mean, this is the second time we've had some major YouTube issues in the last year. Before, they had us completely off of YouTube for several weeks for something that was like totally out of control too. I mean, it's crazy too, because you look around and you see other people doing the same exact thing, maybe at a larger corporate level or even on a smaller scale. Smaller scale guys could fly under the radar, but I mean, come come on, to say this isn't original content, I mean, look at ESPN or anybody else that has like a major YouTube channel, right? So, and just clearing that, I didn't want to get into the small talk of that. I hate even bringing that up or airing dirty laundry, and I'm going to protect the guilty here and not call them out either. But again, they know who they are, and it's quite unfortunate. The best thing I could say is, hey, this is, now the off season, although there were a lot of different things that went on over this past weekend. And like I said, I wish I could get Brian or even, Terry's sick too, so I hope she gets better too. Like, everybody is down and out here. I'm still in a walking boot, believe it or not. But, a little bit of, I guess, raising the spirits here. The 49ers didn't get their 6th Super Bowl. And when you look at it from a perspective of, they were up 10 points with about six and a half minutes to go in the game, and they ended up blowing the game. And I mean, I thought that was pretty crazy. Myself and Brian, we had a little bit going, a little side bet, and we were looking for the over on this game, and it never got there. And I always thought that they could get there, and I'm just like, they're going to get there. They're going to get there. You're inching toward it, and it ended up at 51. I believe the one that we were looking at 53.5 as an over or under, and it's like, if there would have just been a field goal in this game, even the 49ers do something, you know what I mean? But hey, hats off to Andy Reid and their crew, and you got to, for somebody who's been in this business for as long as Andy Reid he's been coaching, I believe, 22 years, and it's just like, wow. Finally getting a Super Bowl, finally getting his due. And I mean, he was kind of unceremoniously just kicked out of Philadelphia. That was last season there, 4-12 in 2012. He hasn't had a losing season with the Kansas City Chiefs yet, so they've been formidable. I have some friends that are Chiefs fans too. I really, I guess coming from a Steelers perspective, and I've seen other fans talk about this, no real ill will towards the Chiefs. I guess no real ill will towards the 49ers either. My biggest thing is my hometown is famous for being the hometown of Eddie DeBartolo, and he was the former owner of the 49ers. It's still within like the DeBartolo York family, but as we know, DeBartolo, this, that, and the other thing, right? Don't need to go into all those details, but it was always odd in such a smaller town in Northeast Ohio, driving down the road and seeing a big 49ers logo on the DeBartolo headquarters. And for much of that, through the 80s, you had your fake Browns fans, I want to call them, in that area that still kind of supported the, quote, local team that was all the way in San Francisco. But the 49ers actually do some things in the community, and they do some good and would stop by. So my only ill will was I didn't want to see them tie up the Steelers with 6 total Super Bowls, and it didn't end up happening anyways. And, it's kind of... and I don't want to say unfortunate, but it was an interesting season, and they had the hot hand early and often. Kyle Shanahan, this really fresh young coach, Jimmy G, young quarterback, a lot of young great players that are on that team on both sides of the ball. So hats off to them too for a great season. Going back to Andy Reid, where's he at standing now? 200, and I think somebody said like 222, I think, lifetime when it comes to playoffs and regular season, 21 years coaching, all these 222s, because the game was on February 2nd, 2020, and that was a palindrome too. If you didn't see it, that means it's the same forwards and backwards, which is kind of crazy. But, there's some extreme patience here too, because obviously, they did some good things, some great things with the Eagles. He was one of the younger coaches when he was hired. He was never a coordinator of any type either. Just different positions. He coached quarterbacks and an offensive assistant and things of that nature. Did Andy Reid, and it's a lot of parallels to Mike Tomlin being a coordinator for a year and coming over to the Steelers. And there's just a little bit of patience here. I mean, it took the Chiefs. Andy Reid took this job in 2013. So this is his 7th season as the Chiefs head coach. So just a little bit of patience. We talk about how rare it is sometimes to win a Super Bowl, and even with a young phenom at quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, it was just not a good first 3 quarters for him. Ends up getting the job done in the end. I thought the officiating overall was fairly decent. There was the questionable, the ref stink call with George Kittle, where they may have applied the rule properly, where it was like completely ignored when it happened with Kyle Rudolph and the Vikings beating the Saints. So that's about the only thing I could say about the officiating there. The Super Bowl ads, you know what? None of them really stood out to me. There were quite a few that I thought were good. I don't know that any were great that are going to be remembered, immortalized as some of them have in the past. We all know like the one Apple commercial that there was, some of the Pepsi ones and Budweiser ones over all the years. And, I guess the two that really stood out to me, I don't know. I was a big fan of the movie Tombstone. So seeing Sam Elliott with Lil Nas X, the Old Town Road type deal, the Cool Ranch Doritos, that was really pretty neat. I thought it was kind of cool. But for me, I really chuckled when I saw Groundhog Day remade on Groundhog Day with Bill Murray and some of the other actors that were still from that movie. And he gets into the Jeep Rubicon or whatever that was. And I thought that was really neat too. So if you didn't see those, or you took a bathroom or break or went to grab another beer, go check those out. I thought they were pretty cool. They're all over the internet. We also have an article. We actually have 2 up that are on the website in the last week. We went over our favorite all-time commercials, and that even includes Mean Joe Green with the hey kid, catch with the Coca-Cola stuff. And a few others. You also forget that Troy Polamalu's in a lot of these ads. He was in one this year too, which is kind of crazy. And I'm going to segue into that in a second. I think somebody's going to be like, Joe, are you going to talk about the halftime show? And I'm like, I don't know what to talk about. These halftime shows really haven't been, they really haven't hit me as far as a target demographic in many, many years. They've never been big on the pop thing and everything else. I think most of them are kind of meh at best, you know what I mean? So for me, I was never a big J-Lo person. I was never into Shakira's music. I mean, if it's on, it's something that's on. It's not something I'm running to the store buying like the albums off of iTunes or anything like that. So believe it or not, and I have a wide range of music that I care for, but I'm not into any particular genre that much that it's going to be like, oh my God, I wish they had like, I don't know, Metallica or somebody on. You know what I mean? That's always one they talk about. And I don't mind a mix of genres for the halftime show, either within the same show or switch it up every other year and try and hit different people. So if it's like the Latin inspired type halftime show this year, great, that's fine. I don't care. I think a lot of people, more or less, they were kind of concerned about, I guess, the word sexuality, and this becomes a little hot button topic. And I'm just kind of like, wherever you stand with that. I don't even know that I could blame the ladies for doing like the salsa dancing and things of that nature. This camera guy, I mean, he was basically putting the camera up, in their butt cheeks. I mean, that's where it really stands. Couldn't they have switched to a different camera angle or something like that? If you think it's that lewd or whatever. I grew up, I remember, what was it, my first year in college or right out of high school, where they had Justin Timberlake and Janet Jackson, and, the whole word wardrobe malfunction was coined at that Super Bowl. So, we're talking almost 20 years ago that happened now. I believe that was like 01. I could be mistaken, but that was a long time ago. So, I mean, it's one of those things where, hey, there's always some type of goofy things, and there have been worse Super Bowl acts. I'm not trying to say that they were awful by any means. I don't know. They were singing in Spanish, and I don't know Spanish. That's the best I could tell you. So, and certainly there was whatever went on last year that I'd already forgotten about until people started bringing up, the half naked dude that was on stage and trying to compare it. And I'm like, you know what? I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. It's a halftime show. It's part of a spectacle. And I guess it's meant to make you talk. At least there weren't like the Jump the Shark thing or whatever with Katy Perry, or the Black Eyed Peas, probably one of the worst acts of all time. So other than that, I mean, there was a lot of things that went on, this past weekend, and they weren't all about commercials or halftime shows or even Demi Lovato nailing the national anthem. I always like a really good national anthem to kick off the game, by the way. Aside from the game, the score, and everything else that went with it, there's there's all this other pomp and circumstance, most of it happening Saturday, the day before the game. And that's where we find out that Troy Polamalu is going to be immortalized in Canton, Ohio, first ballot Hall of Famer. And then we find out a couple days later that Peter King of Sports Illustrated has some totally convoluted reason, and I don't even know why you would even say this or how this comes out. Like, would you really like plant your flag on this? Like, if I had a Hall of Fame vote, okay, I'm one of the people that gets to decide who gets a bust over there in Canton, Ohio in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Am I really going to say I didn't vote for that guy? That doesn't really help my credibility when everybody else did and he's going in on the first ballot. I always had a tremendous amount of respect for Peter King, but it went down just a little bit with that. I don't understand. It's like a lot of people look at like different statistical things with Troy. Maybe he wasn't an interception machine at times. Maybe he got, he wasn't an overnight sensation by any means, at least his rookie season. He got progressed as he went along, but he was also a game changer at other times. And anytime he had the ball in his hands, you had to feel like he might take it to the house. And that's something that takes you from being good to great. And there were other times. How many times did he jump the line of scrimmage? The one against the Titans with the tackle of Kerry Collins, I believe, a quarterback. It jumps the snap. He wasn't offside. Perfectly times it. And he had tried it a couple of other times. Sometimes he got flagged. There was another one that he had that was like very close and very similar that doesn't get the same type of acknowledgement from the media, the NFL, and even Steelers Nation for that matter. So when you look at Troy, I mean, definitely timeless. A lot of people will talk about, they'll make their comparisons with Ed Reed, who played at the same time, played the safety position, but they weren't the same. They weren't the same player. They didn't play the position exactly the same. It's hard to make those type of comparisons. It's like trying to compare Emmitt Smith with Barry Sanders. Not the same type of running back. And of course, then when you go outside of eras, forget about it. Very tough to compare players from the 70s to the 80s to the 90s to the 2000s, et cetera, et cetera. Every era has like different rules. Some of them played less or fewer games. So it's very difficult to get into all of these type of discussions. Just, I'm very happy for Troy Polamalu, and congratulations on him making the Hall of Fame, and also joining, the Centennial members, as we had mentioned before on the program, in Bill Cowher and Donnie Shell, who was also long overdue. And speaking of long overdue, I got to bring up Alan Faneca. Probably the major disappointment of the weekend. I really felt that he was going to go in with Troy. This would have been a pretty big deal, I think, to have two Steelers going at the same time. But I'm also thinking they have all these Steelers going in overall, and that may have hurt Faneca. And I don't understand. Nothing against Steve Hutchinson, definitely a Hall of Famer, as is Alan Faneca. It's not an if, it's a when. I'm just wondering when. He played his last season, forgot about this almost, the Arizona Cardinals in 2010. I mean, what former Steeler doesn't get over to Arizona at some point for, I don't know, like a vacation, or I don't know what they do there sometimes, because very few guys seem to go there and turn their franchise around, and they tend to get them at the tail end of their career. Nice payday or nice weather, whatever it might be. But regardless of that, Alan Faneca, I know there was a big thing because, the whole money situation and the way he had left the Steelers to play with the Jets for 2 seasons, still played at a high level in New York. He's still thought of as a Steeler. He's been back. It's one of these other situations where we talk about some players, whether or not, like if they go and they leave, and will they be welcomed back? And Faneca's been welcomed back. And if you hadn't seen him, man, he's in tremendous shape as well. You wouldn't even recognize the guy, but one of the best ever, paved the way for a lot of big games from different running backs, including Jerome Bettis, who's in the Hall of Fame. And, I look at Steve Hutchinson and I'm kind of wondering, where do you compare? I mean, you got, I said this about Kevin Mawai last year too. And I really felt the Faneca should have went in above both of them. And definitely, this may be a thing where you burn the Hall of Fame down. Everybody goes and riots if Tony Baselli ever gets in over Alan Faneca. But, Faneca has a Super Bowl ring. He's been to the Pro Bowl 9 times. That's more than Hutchinson, too. Hutchinson doesn't have a ring. In fact, they beat Hutchinson's team, the Steelers did, back in 2005. That was Bettis' last ride there. Six-time All-Pro, 2-time second team team All-Pro, and correctly pointed out, I wish I could attribute who said this, but somebody had pointed out how he had changed positions mid-season during one of those second-team All-Pro selections due to injuries. He didn't even play at his normal position on the offensive line, and it's just, there's a guy that's very versatile, long time just guard for the Steelers, very solid, just an Iron Man, almost never hurt, played every snap. Pittsburgh Steelers all-time team. He's part of the 2000s all-decade team for the entire NFL. Again, it's not an if, it's a when this guy's in the Hall of Fame. I think he will be. I hate it if he has to wait another year. We're already talking about, what do you got? Like maybe 5 selections or so. And then I think they bump it up to 7 because they'll have maybe like an executive or coach or style, something pick. And then they do one of these legacy picks as well now. I think they've increased the number. This year is different, obviously, with the NFL 100. So when you're looking at Faneca and you're looking at next year, I mean, this is going to be, I believe, the Peyton Manning and Charles Woodson first years of eligibility. And it's hard to not see both of those guys go in. And somebody else had also said, I believe, Megatron, Kelvin Johnson, may even be in that conversation as well. Although, he played a shorter NFL career, but man, he was a dominant player. So there's going to be some competition to get in there. I just hope that Faneca doesn't have to wait the amount of time that somebody like Donnie Shell did. I believe that was really bad of not being able to get Donnie Shell in there, but you get new guys that retire, and I don't know. I think the NFL's got to change something up with this. They started this, like I said, they started to get like coaches, administrators. They started to do like a vote for that because there were certain coaches and stuff that weren't necessarily getting in there. There's a lot of deserving names, and what's going on is you have so many more NFL players overall. I mean, you have 32 teams now where you didn't. I mean, even when I was younger, there weren't 32 teams, and I don't consider myself to be as old as Brian. So Brian remembers when there was like 4 and they didn't have the Super Bowl, but I know he's not here to defend himself. That's not fair, but I still think, Alan Faneca, okay, there's one more lineman that's kind of out of the way, so to speak, as far as getting into the Hall. The only problem is I know they skipped over the 1 year, and there's still, is it Joe Jacoby for the Redskins that's still, I think he's one of the Hogs, and he's still not in there, and he's considered like the greatest Redskins player to not be in the Hall of Fame. It's much like a Donnie Shell type situation with him right now, and he wasn't even a finalist this year, and it's just, I don't know. And you just look at it, there's going to be more great players coming down the pipeline like Drew Brees and Tom Brady that'll be, first ballot without a doubt. Ben Roethlisberger should be as well. I know some people are going to give that some grief. I think they may give Eli Manning some grief too, but, that's a whole other conversation for another day. With Alan Faneca, I think you got to give Alan Faneca his due. Again, it's a matter of when, not an if. Now, here's the other if that I think Steelers Nation felt a little slighted on this. This happened also on Saturday. It was the NFL honors, and it leaked that Stephon Gilmore had won the Defensive Player of the Year award. And I'm just kind of like, okay. I kind of had this feeling that, they wouldn't give it to TJ Watt. I don't know why. I was hopeful that it wasn't the case, but I also knew in my gut, back in my mind, that he probably wasn't the kind of lock that I would like him to be. And of course, I'm being biased with everything. And, I just, to me, I understand. I understand what everybody wants to say about Gilmore locking down everyone for the full season and, how many touchdowns he get. He didn't give up a touchdown. And you look at some of these advanced statistics that come from like Pro Football Focus, and some people were making fun of me about this, but aside from giving up just one touchdown, Steven Nelson had him like neck and neck in every category. And Steven Nelson isn't even, considered for the Pro Bowl, which is kind of ridiculous in and of itself for the season that he had. And that's what I'm kind of getting at with Gilmore. And I understand their situations, and Gilmore, he only is doing, what's in front of him. So, I don't want to discredit that he did a good job, but at the same time, you take a look at he played Ben Roethlisberger with possibly a bum arm. That was the first game of the year. He faced Josh Rosen with the Dolphins before they put Ryan Fitzpatrick in the middle of the game. And I believe that was one of his pick sixes was against the Dolphins. The other one, I believe, was against Andy Dalton and the Bengals later on in the year. And a lot of his numbers line up very closely with Minka Fitzpatrick, who wasn't in this conversation, really. You had, let me see. I was trying to find all of the votes because I'm trying to find who the other Chandler Jones. That's who the other guy was pretty much had the same year that TJ Watt did. And I'm like, okay, Chandler Jones gets this. Maybe it's just because, it's a cornerback and it's harder to quantify some of these things. I don't know. But, everybody's talking about how great New England's defense was, the total defense. They had so many interceptions. I mean, Gilmore was tied for second interceptions returned for touchdowns. He was, third in passer rating allowed. And the passer rating, for Steven Nelson was right up there too. I don't have it in front of me and I apologize. But, it's been tweeted out there before. I'm going to see if I could actually find it over on the Steel City Underground Twitter while I'm chatting. The thing, with Gilmore is when you're talking about that, I mean, he had 6 interceptions total for the season. That's not like a, astronomical amount. Joe Hayden had 5. And, you have TJ Watt who had 14 and a half sacks, which I get isn't astronomical. Chandler Jones had 19? But TJ had, the forced fumble maybe edge, the fumble recovery edge. He had he was starting to get into that category where they start to create statistics for you with 8 straight games being involved with a turnover on the ball. And you look at the season the Steelers had. I mean, the Steelers' defense was on the field perpetually because their offense stunk. You take a look at what the New England Patriots had this year, and I was going through some of their schedule. But just a second ago, I was talking about Ben with a bum arm, Josh Rosen for at least a half or 3/4 of football against the Dolphins. They had Luke Falk in the Jets. Matt Barkley comes in week 4 in Buffalo when they tattoo Josh Allen. He gets to with the Redskins. They're not even playing any of their guys. They got Colt McCoy as their quarterback in week 5 against the Redskins. Daniel Jones, a rookie with the Giants. Then they get Sam Darnold back. This was the week after he had come back from mono and they whipped the Dallas Cowboys, and they embarrassed them 33-0. Baker Mayfield with the Browns, and they're undefeated. They're 8-0 against pretty much, I want to say, scrub teams. The Patriots are always one of the top organizations or better football teams and well coached, but look at who they faced for half the season, and then they come in and they play against Baltimore. And Baltimore, they shocked the world, but it was the first real competition that they had, and they didn't have a way to defend against all of that. It's just very interesting to me. I'm still not going to say that the Patriots defense was absolutely lousy, but then it also makes you wonder about what happened at the end of the year where they lose 27-24 to the Dolphins and 20-13 against the Titans. It's kind of tough. I mean, I don't know. And the few of their other losses, Deshaun Watson with the Texans and Patrick Mahomes with the Chiefs, it does kind of make you wonder about all of this. They did face Carson Wentz, and they also faced Dak Prescott as well. And that kind of, I don't know, does that kind of pump up or beef up Gilmore's numbers? I mean, I'm not really sure. It's tough for me to say. I'm being a homer here, but I really felt as though I was hoping that TJ Watt would have gotten this nod. He didn't, and that's pretty much the end of that story. And I'm trying to find real quick that I could give you. Cannot find the numbers that I'm looking for because I probably retweeted the thing with Troy Polamalu so much that it's kind of lost. So I apologize for that. I wish I had it here, and if I find it, I'm going to mention it in another episode here in the near future. So anyways, folks, that's all there is for us today. Sorry, it's a little bit shorter of an episode than usual. We are now in the down period, but there is some bonus football and some other things to talk about with a new league starting up just this weekend. So I think we're going to talk a little bit of XFL coming up. Quite a few people that were tied to the Steelers organization will be involved in with the whole operation. There's 8 teams and then some in this new league, so we'll be taking a look at that as well, and hopefully I'll have one of my colleagues joining me so I don't get, very long-winded here and you only hear my voice, because I know how boring that can be. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, of course. My name is Joe Kuzma, and we always encourage our listeners out there to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.